Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I am so thrilled that everybody came out here on this cold and snowy day, but it's fun to be outside in the snow, right? Who doesn't love a good snowfall? So I am thrilled, really thrilled to be celebrating my first Inclusion Shabbat with Etz Chaim tonight. As some of you may know, I actually wrote my thesis on exactly this topic, specifically in the Reform movement. So it is certainly a passion of mine and something that I find very important in my life. And amongst the many highlights, and certainly a few tears of writing a thesis, the highlight really was discovering just how much in our Jewish text and in our tradition supports the idea of inclusion to the fullest extent. It starts from the beginning of Torah, in Genesis 1, where we are taught that each person is created in the image of God. Exodus goes on to show us an example through Moses, who has a stutter, and yet God makes it clear that God not only created Moses with that stutter, but believed that he, with his additional challenge, was absolutely the best person to go and free the Israelites from Egypt. And if these texts of inclusion were only included in the Torah, then we might have had a harder time justifying the importance of inclusion in Judaism. But luckily, the rabbis also realized that and continued to ensure that inclusion was a topic of conversation throughout later commentaries. Isaiah teaches us that my house shall be a house of worship for all people. And the psalmists teach us that we should teach every person according to their own way. The Talmud teaches us that all Israel is responsible for one another, and that there are three partners in the formation of any person: man, woman, and God. An unfortunately heteronormative way of looking at the family structure. But what is most important here is that in every person, the Talmud tells us that God is responsible for giving them spirit and breath and the beauty of features. These commentaries on inclusion continue well into our modern day, and as a result, we have built an incredible foundation on which our inclusion program here has been built. The Psalms teach us, Olam Chesed Yibaneh, to build a world of loving kindness. And as Menachem Creditor has so aptly put into the song, I and you and God and all of us will build this world from love. With love and understanding and openness comes the ability to include all peoples of all abilities into our community. And tonight, we take time to highlight the incredible gifts that all peoples of all abilities bring to our community. We begin our service this evening with the blessing of the candles, which can be found on page 2. And it's my pleasure to invite up the Friedland family to light our Shabbat candles tonight.
Baruch ata Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher קידשנו מצוותיו וציוונו לנו זהו Shabbat.
Amen. Good job, thank you. We continue now singing Hine Ma Tov in the middle of page 2.
טוב ומנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד.
It's now my pleasure to invite up Brenda Feinberg.
Each one of us a unique creation, genetic material that holds a neshama, a soul that is pure. Our bodies and our minds are different and diverse creations, full of strengths and vulnerabilities, talents, challenges, abilities, struggles. Some of us born into our bodies needing help to move, to see, to hear, to talk, to eat. Some of us will take our bodies and minds for granted until they change with age, reminding us that there are times when we all need support. The human body is a vessel that we can see, but deeper, what is constant and in common among us all is the unseen, the souls that you have placed within us. Maker HaChaim, source of life, help us encounter one another as that pure soul created in your image, that we see ourselves and one another as B'Tselem Elohim.
We continue now with the Baruch Hu on page 4. Please rise.
La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la.
Please be seated. It's my pleasure to invite up Marcia Sweeten to lead us in Ma'ariv Aravim.
Please join with me in reciting the Ma'ariv Aravim. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bivaro Ma'ariv Aravim b'chachmo toteach she'arim umatmuna mesaneh itim umachalif et hazmanim umesader et hakochavim B'shmotehem b'rakia kirtzono, borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or, uma'avir yom umevi layla, uma'avdil bein yom uvein layla, Adonai tziva'o shemo, el chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu li'olam v'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, Ma'ariv Aravim.
It's my pleasure to invite up Daniel Frankel to share a reading on page 5.
The one thing that you have that nobody else has is you, your voice, your mind, your story, your vision. So write and draw and build and play and dance and live as only you can. Neil Gaiman.
We continue now with the Shema at the top of page 6, and I invite you to rise either in body or spirit as you're able to.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Please be seated as we continue chanting the Ve'ahavta.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibartam bam v'shivtecha b'beitecha u'v'lechtecha v'derech u'shofecha u'kummecha u'kshatam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'einecha u'chtabtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
A quote from Maimonides. Every Israelite is under an obligation to study Torah, whether they are rich or poor, in sound health or ailing, in the vigor of youth or old and feeble. Among the great sages of Israel, some were hewers of wood, some drawers of water, others were blind. Nevertheless, they devoted themselves by day and by night to the study of Torah. They are included among the transmitters of the tradition in the direct line of Moses. We continue now singing Mi Chamocha at the top of page 7. from the Jerusalem Talmud. The Jerusalem Talmud shares the words of Rabbi Yochanan, who said each of the 40 days that Moses was on Mount Sinai, God taught him the entire Torah, and each night Moses forgot what he had learned. Finally, God gave it to him as a gift. If so, why did God not give the Torah to him as a gift on the first day? It's a valid question. Rabbi Yochanan answers, in order to encourage the teachers of those who learn in a non-traditional manner. We continue singing Hashkivenu now at the bottom of page 7.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomrenu l'chaim. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Shelter us beneath thy wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us, God, wrong from right. Amen. 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 Amen.
From Isaiah chapter 56. And the foreigners who join themselves to Adonai, to minister to God, to love the name of God, to be God's servants, everyone who keeps Shabbat and does not profane it, and holds fast to my covenant, these I will bring to my holy mountain, and will make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices will be accepted on my altar. For my house shall be called a house of prayer for all peoples. We continue celebrating Shabbat with the words of Vishamru on page 8.
Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. בני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי nafash, Shabbat v'nafash, v'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
We come now to our congregational tefillah, which can be found on page 9 of our Sidurim, and I ask everyone to please rise in either body or spirit at this time to join us in the Amidah.
Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi agiteilatecha. Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi agiteilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומדום מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה. ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. אתה קדוש בשמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה, ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
Will the congregation please be seated? We continue on page 12 with a reading. I am odd, I am new, I wonder if you are too. I hear voices in the air, I see you don't, and that's not fair. I want to not feel blue, I am odd, I am new. I pretend that you are too. I feel like a boy in outer space. I touch the stars and feel out of place. I worry what others might think. I cry when people laugh. It makes me shrink. I am odd. I am new. I understand now that so are you. I say I feel like a castaway. I dream of a day that's okay. I try to fit in. I hope that someday I do. I am odd. I am new. We continue on page 11 with the singing of Shalom Rav, followed by silent meditation.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Tasim Leolam. Ki ata melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Tasim Leolam. V'tov b'necha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol elu v'chol shah b'shlomecha. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Ose shalom romav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Ose shalom romav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Ose shalom romav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
We come now to Seder Kriyat HaTorah, the service for the reading of the Torah. And the Torah of inclusion joins two terms, Torah and inclusion. Torah means both the foundational sacred text of Jewish wisdom, as well as the process by which Jews and loved ones perceive insights, meaning, goodness, and connection to what we hold sacred in our lives. Inclusion means expanding who belongs within the shelter of Judaism, with particular attention to those who have felt hurt, invisible, ignored, and on the margins of life. Inclusion is shorthand for the way we aspire to treat and be with each other and the kind of community that we hope to achieve. And so we join together for Seder Kriyat HaTorah. And so before I ask all of you to please rise, I want to remind you that we will be bringing the Torah into the sanctuary. But because of COVID, we are not touching the Torah and then kissing our Sidurim, or we just want to have some social distance, and we hope that we can return to our former minchag, our former custom, where we were able to do that. But for now, it is enough that we bring Torah into the community. And so I ask you to please rise for Ein Kamocha.
Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai, v'ein k'maasecha, malchutecha malchut kol ha'amim, u'memshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imloch, leolam va'ed. Adonai oz le'amo yitain. Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom, v'shalom, v'shalom.
We continue in the middle of page 13. Let's read together. In this scroll is the secret of our people's life from Sinai until now. Its teaching is love and justice, goodness and hope. Freedom is its gift to all who treasure it.
Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shmo.
Gadlu Adonai iti, un romama shemo yachdav. Exalt Adonai with me. Let us extol God's name together.
Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Olam, Olam, Omed, Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Olam, Olam, Omed. HaTorah ve'al-Avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim. HaTorah ve'al-Avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim.
You may be seated. Last week in Parashah Yitro, we read about the giving of the Torah to all the people. Ironically, this week in Parashah Mishpatim, the first phrase states, "These are the rules that you shall set before them." Both signify inclusive practices, as the statement includes all people. Parashah Mishpatim is a series of rules related to holiday observances, dietary practices, business ethics, and the treatment of animals. Two of the Torah's stranger alerts appear in Mishpatim. First we read, "You shall not wrong a stranger or oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt." And then later on in the portion we are told, "You shall not oppress a stranger, for you know the feelings of the stranger, having yourselves been strangers in the land of Egypt." Our obligation is to be aware of and to include all people in our community. Among all the laws discussed in Parashat Mishpatim, we are taught the mitzvah of not taking advantage of the stranger, the widow, and the orphan.
Ya'amod David ben Gittel. Oh, let's try that again. Ya'amod Mordechai Avraham ben David uPriela la'aliyah haTorah. Ya'amod Avraham ben Yaakov uBela la'aliyah haTorah.
Baruch Ad Adonai Barak.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Ad Olam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Vahinen Va'ed. Asher Banu Meko Amen. V'Tanadu Toto. Baruch Tanai Henrik Tota Torah.
Amen. Amen. Veger lo toneh velo tilchatzenu, ki gerim chayitem be'eretz Mitzrayim. Kol almona veyotam lo ta'anun. Im ana te'aneh oto, ki im tza'ok Yitzchak elai shamoa eshma sa'akato. V'chara ha'api, v'haragati etchem becharev, v'hayu nesechem, almunanot uvnechem yitamim. Im kesev tilchva et ami, et ha'ani, imach lo tihiyeh, lo kenaseh, lo tishme'un elav, neshech, Im chaval tichbol simlat re'echa ad bo hashemesh tishvavenu lo ki hu knusato livada hi simlato la'aro ba'me yishkav v'haya ki yitzach elai v'simati keichanun ani.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'kei ha'olam natan לנו b'kahinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. At this time in our worship service, our thoughts turn to those of our community and our family who are ill and in need of healing. We think this evening of Elwood Frederick Bryan, Gary Tatiner, Kristen Nystro, Mark Zellman, Jim Hines, Cheryl Hildebrand, Richard Vane, Lila Rashowski, Arthur Lang, Cheryl Ball, Heather Borzak, John Eulenberg, Franny Ein, Evan Georgie, Kathy Minardi, Rhonda Rhodes, Karen Mullen-Koski, David Menikoff, Dick McLean, Stacia Thyman, Quince Newman, Carol Pretmar, Brooke Ann Gottesman, Robin Channon, John Garvey, Bridget Stern, Joy Rosenthal, Jim Berry, Rusty Taylor, Alice Agris, Kurt Johnson, Rabbi Bruce Goldwasser, Avraham Ben Natan Vasara, and Lauren Vane. We also pray for those who suffer, whom we know not by name. Mishaberach Avraham Yitzchak, V'Yaakov ve'imotenu Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah, Hu Yevarech v'Rapeh et kol cholei Yisrael, v'Yishlach lahem b'mheira, Refuah Shlema, Refuah Nefesh, Refuah Guf, and Omar. Amen. May God, who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal all who are stricken. May the Holy One of Praise mercifully restore them to health and to vigor. May God grant them health of body, health of spirit, and of mind. And let us say, Amen.
May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imotenu mikor habarakah lamotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Ya'amod David ben Gittel Hagba, Ta'amod Priela Ruth bat Avraham Golelet. Will the congregation please rise?
V'zot haTorah asher sam Moshe livnei b'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe.
Please be seated. It is my pleasure to invite to the beam at this time to lead us in the prayer for Israel and the prayer for our country, Dave Wartzman, Jody, and Shana Wartzman. We continue on page 16.
O Heavenly One, Protector and Redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love, spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. Amen.
O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Help us to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways we serve you. Bless our country, that it may always be a stronghold of peace and its advocate among the nations.
May contentment reign within its borders, health and happiness within its homes, strength the bones of friendship among the inhabitants of all lands, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. We praise you, O God, the source of peace. Amen.
Our service continues on page 17 as we rise to return the Torah to the ark.
It's chaim ilam machazikim babetom keha meusharetz chaim ilam machazikim babetom keha meushar. Shalom, 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 shalom. It is a tree of life to those who will pass through it, and all of its supporters are happy. It is a tree of life to those who will pass through it, and all of its supporters are happy. Shalom, 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 shalom.
Please be seated.
It's so nice to see so many people here, and welcome to the participants on the stream. The month of February is dedicated as Jewish Disability and Awareness and Inclusion Month. This is a worldwide initiative that began 13 years ago. Our congregation has been an inclusive congregation for more years than that. David and I became members here over 40 years ago, and I began teaching in the school. Even then, the doors were open to all, and we made accommodations for children and families as needed. Students with disabilities have been educated, welcomed, and participated in life cycle events. The first B'nai Mitzvah of a student with a disability that I'm aware of occurred over 25 years ago. I am honored to welcome several families that are going to tell their stories of inclusion at Eitz Chaim. Before I do that, though, I want to read something a congregant wrote. She was not able to be here. This is from Diane Brown Sturt, and this is her experience. I lost my ability to hear high-frequency consonant sounds when I was ill at only 6 months of age. Growing up with very loving parents and great friendships, my self-esteem did not suffer. I was a capable and artistic little girl who gazed contentedly out of the window in elementary school while my teachers tried to engage the class in sounding out words. I did not hear P's and B's and T's as separate sounds, so I simply tuned out. My hearing was not tested, and I was moved to a special needs class for children who were slow, in quotes. All intentions were good, but I was really getting help until an especially sharp educator suggested that I learn through visual memory. I zoomed ahead once I was freed from the burden of hearing consonant sounds. As years went by, I had many frustrations, but again, the caring and validation of my parents and husband and friends have made my life complete. I learned sign language just in case I'd become more and more hearing impaired. Thank goodness I did not decline in my hearing until I reached 65 years of age. There have been numerous bumps in the road, and asking people to repeat what they've said can be daunting. I love movie houses and the theater, but I miss important lines even with my hearing aids. But I'm a good listener in spite of it, and had a lovely career as a helping professional. Living with the threat of COVID has made face covering a necessity for many, and not being able to lip read has rendered me unable to converse or to listen without closed captioning. But I remain feisty and helpful of others, much less fortunate than I am. And as they say, hope is always in view. I now would like to invite the Feinberg family up to present their story.
Our family's story of inclusion is a narrative that is continually being written. Our feelings of belonging are more reliable within our schools than in the community, but we appreciate every positive interaction and opportunity that comes our way. Our son Michael is charming and talkative, yet struggles with emotional regulation and learning delays. Those who are acquainted with Michael, however, know that something as simple as showing him an amusing photo of an animal can immediately improve his mood.
Wonderful teachers, paraprofessionals, and a few insightful therapists have made all the difference over the years. When it was time to find an inclusive Jewish community and synagogue, Etz Chaim was the standout. It was the only synagogue that prioritized inclusion and had a religious school inclusion class and a specialist. Michael enjoys attending religious school more each year and is feeling more at home as he navigates the building. Rachel Wood's devotion to fostering an inclusive environment for everyone who enters our building makes Etz Chaim a place that's accessible in every way.
Inclusion for us means being treated as a normal family whenever possible, while also being recognized as a family that might benefit from a little extra understanding from time to time. We can all become part of each other's daily narrative when inclusion is on the agenda. If you have any cool animal pics on your phone, feel free to share them with Michael.
I now invite Marsh Sweeten to come forward.
Shabbat Shalom. Most of us are born hearing and take hearing and all of its implications for granted. I was born a hearing person and was the beneficiary of all that it provided. Conversations with one or more people, going to concerts, interacting in school and in my jobs, teaching, becoming a teacher and administrator for children with special needs, and teaching graduate and undergraduate students the various needs and accommodations for these students. Little did I know that I would eventually become a person with special needs. After retiring from 37 years of teaching, my daughter and friends told me that I wasn't hearing them when they spoke to me. Of course, I was in full denial until my daughter asked and actually implored me to see an audiologist. Thinking it was a waste of my time, I reluctantly went through the initial diagnostic process. To my shock and amazement, the results indicated that I indeed had a hearing loss, almost completely in one ear and less than 50% in the other. How could that be? I was existing in a hearing world. Further diagnostic tests were even more shocking and amazing. I had 4 tumors in and on my brain, and even more scary, the decision with doctors in my family was to do skull-based surgery to determine where we go from here. Fortunately, after removing some of one tumor, the doctors and laboratory tests determined that the partial tumor they removed was benign and concluded that all the others were as well, but we will continue to monitor their growth. However, one of the tumors had been sitting on my acoustic nerve of my right ear and destroyed that hearing in that ear. As a result of this finding, and in discussion with my mother and doctors, it was determined that the tumors were the result of an experimental radiation treatment that was done at one of Chicago's hospitals when I was 4 or 5. The physicists speculated that this would be a preventive to having tonsillectomies in later years. Hundreds of us were guinea pigs that ended up with many serious medical issues as we grew up. Leukemia, various other cancers, and deafness were among the issues we struggled with. but we never had to have tonsillectomies. Learning to live with a hearing loss is much more difficult than I thought. When I was teaching classes at the university about students who needed accommodations because of various disabilities, I taught them everything that I was taught about hearing loss and accommodations, as well as other disabilities. I had book knowledge, but there was so much that I didn't know, because I had not walked in the shoes of people who are deaf or hard of hearing. Not being able to hear my grandchildren's voices, missing conversations when I was with a group of friends, watching TV without captioning, and being an active participant in congregational life were just some of the issues that were impacting my life. I wear one hearing aid, and that is just a middle-of-the-road grade, and the recent cost was $3,000. This was before the new law that requires insurance companies to pay the first $2,500 every 2 years. I still cannot participate in group discussions when more than one person is talking. Without captioning here at the temple, I am not able to understand what is said, even though there are stronger microphones, because louder isn't better. My family knows, but sometimes have to be reminded that they need to be facing me so that I combine my hearing with lip reading. As was mentioned just a minute ago, COVID has really caused all those of us with hearing loss an extra burden because we can no longer lip read. Those of you who know me know that I am an unrelenting advocate for accommodations for those of us who are deaf and hard of hearing, as well as accommodations for all children and adults who need them. In addition, I am the president of the Chicago Area Association for Late Deafened Adults, which allows me to use this as a platform for advocating for the rights of those with hearing loss beginning at birth or later. Some of you have seen me at services, board meetings, or other functions with a phone in my hand. I am not texting my friends, but rather I am using an app on my phone that turns speech into text. It is not perfect, but I am able to understand most of what is said, although sometimes the text is funny and has interesting translations. Hearing loss is much more frequent than most of us realize. 2 to 3 out of every 1,000 children are born with detectable level hearing loss in one or both ears, which is why all babies are now tested immediately after birth. 90% of deaf children are born to hearing parents. Men are almost twice as likely to have a hearing loss. 5.5% of the world population have a disabling hearing loss, and 14% of Americans 12 and over have a hearing loss in both ears, which is one of the reasons why I'm constantly asking my grandson what the decibel levels are in his earbuds. His generation most likely will be living with hearing losses at much younger ages. I have come to accept my hearing loss as part of who I am. Do I wish this wasn't the case? Absolutely. But life doesn't stop with a hearing loss or any disability. We share one thing in common. We are differently able. So when you see the screen with captioning and the interpreter for members who are deaf, be proud the congregation Eitz Chaim is championing the rights of all members of the congregation who could benefit from these inclusions. I am proud to be a member of this congregation, Sisterhood President, and a member of the Inclusion Committee.
I now invite the Friedland family to come up.
Shabbat Shalom. My name is David Friedland, and our story of inclusion begins the day we first visited Etz Chaim. In 2014, when we were looking for a Jewish community to join, we attended the prospective member spring picnic. My wife was raised Catholic, and then my then 4-year-old son, Sam, has Down syndrome, so needless to say, we were looking for the most inclusive Jewish community possible. Upon entering the building, we were greeted by Rachel Wood, who immediately made us feel welcome. She explained that Etz Chaim had many congregants with disabilities, including 2 families with children who had Down syndrome that had recently celebrated their B'nai Mitzvah. Within days, we had spoken with multiple families, including the Spenadils and the Evans, who are both here tonight, and learned all about the support and opportunities for inclusion that Etz Chaim could offer for both Sam and our family. And over the past 8 years, Etz Chaim has been a wonderful community for us. Sam has truly thrived here by attending Judaica classes with his peers and while being supported in a classroom with a classroom madrachim. He's proudly received additional specialized Hebrew instruction and can now proudly, as you saw earlier, recite numerous prayers on his own. And he is definitely looking forward to his bar mitzvah. Sam and his 2 siblings, Jack and Ellie, love being a part of the Etz Chaim congregation, and that is in great part due to the value that this community places on inclusion. And for that, we are truly, truly appreciative, and a special thank you, as always, to Rachel.
And now I'd like to introduce Daniel Frankel.
Shabbat Shalom. For those who don't know me, I'm Daniel Frankel. My family and I moved to Aurora from San Francisco when I was in kindergarten. We joined Etz Chaim in 1994 as we knew Rabbi Bob, as my grandparents were longtime members of Etz Chaim. When I was younger, I had learning disabilities. I learned differently than others. I am a person with special challenges with an intellectual disability. I learn at my own pace. When I was in public school, I worked with many teaching assistants and tutors to help me learn and to do better and understand my schoolwork. I best understand in more simple terms. When I was in Hebrew school, I had a Hebrew tutor. I found that it was challenging for me to read and write Hebrew. It was very helpful having a Hebrew tutor every Sunday and Wednesday. I'm thankful for my Hebrew tutors that have helped me in the past. At about 3rd grade, I got very interested in playing the guitar. I had a very patient guitar teacher who taught me lessons once a week. As I got better at playing guitar, I was very interested in playing Jewish music. I was also very interested in playing guitar for Etz Chaim's religious school for young children. I find that playing guitar on Sunday morning relieves my stress after a long week. I also play hockey on the special needs hockey team for people with intellectual disabilities, and I also like using my photography skills, as those are a few of my stress relievers. I work with a job coach who I have worked with for many years. She is a resource to me if I have any questions or concerns about my job. She has helped me find a few jobs in the past. I'm thankful I'm a part of Etz Chaim's Inclusion Committee, and I'm glad that the Jewish community at Etz Chaim recognizes all sorts of people with disabilities as more and more communities get more and more inclusive.
Shabbat Shalom. I'm Laura Piachak, and I'm representing the Board of Directors tonight. I want to thank everyone who's joined us for tonight's Inclusion Shabbat service in celebration of Jewish Disability Awareness, Acceptance, and Inclusion Month. I just have a few announcements for you this evening. Rabbi Kozanowski will be on sabbatical during the month of February. If you require rabbinical assistance, Rabbi Weiner will be happy to help. On Wednesday, February 2nd at 7:15 p.m., the Environmental Task Force will have an informational program, Recycling Beyond the Basics, via Zoom. Kay McKean, the Executive Director of SCARCE, will focus on what and what cannot be recycled, ways to reuse items, and how to safely dispose of hazardous materials. Please register online. Save the date for our congregational retreat to Ostarui. From April 1st through 3rd, join us in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin for a weekend of celebrating our superheroes. Learn about Jewish superheroes of song, comedy, food, Torah, art, literature, history, and our own superheroes of Etz Chaim. More information to come. Thank you to our rabbis for leading our service this evening, to Cindy Michalasi for providing the music, to Lisa Paputsky. I'm so sorry, Liza. And to Lauren Mistrud for being our greeter tonight. Next Friday night, February 4th, our Shabbat service will begin at 7:30 p.m. Shabbat Shalom.
We begin our concluding prayers with Aleinu, and it's my pleasure to invite up Mark and Tommy Wright to open our ark. We are on page 18. Please rise.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, latet gedula liotzer bereshit, shelo asanu kigoye haratzot, velo samanu kamishpechot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, umishtachavim umodim, livnei melech, malchei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu.
Please be seated.
V'ne'emar v'chaya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo
Our thoughts and prayers now turn to those who have departed this earth, those of our family and friends and in this community who have died in this season and in years past. And on this Shabbat, we remember Adele Bierman, mother of Marjorie Apple, Herschel Neil Lane, father of Bruce Lane, Stephen Lipson, cousin of Catherine Lease, Leroy Liss, father of Judith Mindel, grandfather of Rachel Sachek, Manu Patel, father of Anita Stoller, Miriam Stein, mother of Harvey Stein, Eleanor Barrett, mother of Timothy Barrett, Walter Beck, grandfather of Sharon Roth, A. Winifred Blewett, mother of Carol Davis, Ellen Bogan, mother of Brett Bogan, Jane Gannett Siegel, mother of Marcy Siegel, grandmother of Rachel Kaiser, and grandmother of Haviva Siegel, Golda Mendelson, grandmother of Marcy Siegel, Albert J. Nymark, brother of Lawrence Nymark, Pearl Sarah, sister of Lawrence Nymark, Sherwin Allen Fox, father of Marla Gerard, Vincent Headington, husband of Maureen Headington, Milton Hyams, uncle of Michelle Miller, Marjorie Lane, mother of Bruce Lane, Edward Shiner, stepfather of Linda Pfeffer, Joseph Singer, father of Richard Singer, Richard Solomon, father-in-law of Mark Wright, Jack Summerfield, grandfather of Ellie Farkas, Wendy Zeitlin, aunt of Barbara Tischler, Eleanor Bernfeld, mother of Judith Farber, Solomon Steinman, grandfather of Cynthia Sawyer, Jack Trofimo, father of Jordan Trofimo, grandfather of Janet Whitmire, Zena Carpenter, cousin of Stephen Kapp, Rebecca Effie Sokol, mother of Howard Sokol, Ida Stein, mother of Robert Stein, Ann Zamost, friend of Etz Chaim, Adele Bierman, grandmother of Deborah Harris, Diana Sears, mother-in-law of Margaret Sears, Jack Kaplan, father of Marcia Kaplan, William Piachuk, father and father-in-law of Mark and Laura Piachuk. And we mourn the recent passing of Rabbi Jay Brickman, friend of Barb Sfars, Jean Deal, mother of Susan Wisniewski, Myra Kay, aunt of Ellen Simpson, Randy Taylor, close friend of Kathy Shapiro, Johnny Dew, cousin of Ann Stewart, David Talbot, father of John Talbot, Stanley Weinstein, uncle of Craig Mandel. We join together in the words of the Mourner's Kaddish on page 19, and I invite you to rise now in body or spirit. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyamechon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehi shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam ulalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yit hadar, v'yit aleh, v'yit halal, shemei kudashah b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush bechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen.
V'imru, amen. V'imru, amen. V'imru, amen. V'imru, amen.
Please be seated as we continue with our concluding song, Ma Yafeh Hayom.
So please join me in signing our closing song. Put your books on your lap and together. Ma Yafeh Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom. Shabbat Shalom.
And we join together in Kiddush, and then we'll have Tigonegs outside so everybody can make their own Kiddush as well. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, morei peri hagafen l'chaim. And we join together in Motzi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'te'avon. In the words of Liz Fossline, diversity is having a seat at the table, inclusion is having a voice, and belonging is having that voice be heard. Shabbat Shalom.